I think for your audience, there's quite a lot of information in there. As an international broadcaster, there are some things that we can use that have a broader international appeal. But there was a lot that was, what we could call too much inside baseball for the broader audience, but was very rich in detail for your home audience. For example, the state's security agency, since its inception, has been absolutely overwhelmed by the requests of foreign intelligence services, in particular the United States, Israel, and others, as they prosecute their global war on terror, using quotes. Despite what South African security experts told us was their greatest threat being the far right within your own country, they face endless requests and tasks about pursuing individuals the West considers as affiliated with Al-Qaeda, or the Israelis see as being involved somehow in developing Iran's nuclear program. And so this new security service is absolutely overwhelmed with the spying requests of other organizations. Meanwhile, dozens of spy agencies are spying under the nose of the SSA, that they're just overwhelmed with all this espionage activity. As one intelligence officer told us, Johannesburg has become the Eldorado of espionage. And I think this comes at a time when South Africa's young democracy is not mature enough to handle these stresses. And it's, in effect, resulted in outside powers being able to manipulate the services of your country.
From what you've seen, which Western agencies are putting pressure on the South African state agencies to do their job for them?
Oh, every single one of them. In this particular digital leak, and we accept it as we find it, if it might help to think of it as like a discarded garbage bag. We didn't select what was in there, we found what was in there. So it's a fragment that goes into a broader mosaic of espionage in South Africa. There happened to be a heavy focus on documents from Middle East intelligence services and Mossad. And it's quite clear that Israel and Iran are playing spy and counter-spy, and the South Africans are caught up in the middle. And especially the United States is also in on this because they field, or give endless requests to the SSA with respect to Al-Qaeda, and to also monitor these South African Muslim groups and these individuals who the West might think is suspicious. And the overall effect this has is it keeps the SSA busy with fielding these outside requests, while the real threat to South Africans goes overlooked. And of course, there is the counter-espionage aspect, which is if your services are so bogged down and tasked with doing liaison work with other services, you're not able to, you're seeing the trees but not the forest. This again is the phenomena that we observe from all of these, hundreds of documents that we've received. And of course, it begs a question of at what stage of development is your security agency, and does it need to have all the powers if it doesn't have the oversight and the maturity to handle the organization?
Clayton, you spoke to the South African State Security Agency?
Well, we made numerous approaches to them, as well as the Inspector General for Intelligence in your country. Those requests were denied, and we did speak with former types. Barry Gilders and Ronnie Casseroles were kind enough to give us interviews, not knowing what we had in our possession. But we were turned down by virtually everyone we approached. And I should note that a lot of your former intelligence types are now in the military-industrial business, and it really reeks. This revolving door of intelligence to business. But that's par for the course, unfortunately, in today's state.
Who described Johannesburg as the Eldorado of espionage?
An intelligence officer we spoke with. You got to understand, obviously, South Africa is a very important country on the continent. It is, if you will, the front door to the rest of the continent. And you have, after apartheid, such a blossoming of diplomatic relations. So many embassies came into Pretoria and Johannesburg. And then with that, so many embassies come so many different intelligence services. And of course, they're all vying over different things on the continent. South Africa's diplomat trying to influence South Africa's diplomatic positions. You'll see that in the papers that we'll be releasing in the coming days. And also fighting over, whether it's natural resources or trying to obtain and steal technology from South Africa. whether it has to relate to nuclear material, missile material. It's all there. And it shows really the shadowy underworld that your government has tried to keep hidden from public view, and certainly Western governments have tried to keep hidden from public view.
And very briefly, Clayton, finally, we spoke to one analyst here on eNCA who said, this kind of leaked spy secrets really do as much harm as predicted or suspected. Spying is so commonplace nowadays. What kind of implications should we in South Africa take out of this revelation? We haven't seen the spy tapes. You guys have been able to see them.
Well, they're all on Al-Jazeera.com and the Guardian, the UK Guardian, so everyone can see what we're publishing. That's the first point. The second point is that's a common argument put forward by security types. Of course, they want to keep their work beyond the oversight because they have a business to continue, if you will. That argument was said after WikiLeaks, after that argument has been used in the past, and we have found it gives better oversight when the public have some idea of what their government is doing, when they're spending tens of millions of rand in your name and how they're using it. There should be a debate within South Africa, and I think actually that the release of this in Africa, in South Africa, should provoke a parliamentary debate over the direction that your security services are going, and what is the proper oversight relationship between your government and its security forces.
Clayton, final question for you. From what you've seen from those tapes, from what you've gathered, is that pressure on the South African State Security Agency still continuing in 2015?
Absolutely. I mean, the documents are valid they're current up until December 2014. The documents, I should say, go from 2006 until December 2014. The SSA, it appeared to us and other analysts who looked at it, is absolutely overwhelmed, lacks oversight, lacks mission clarity, and is absolutely vulnerable to manipulation from outside powers. It recognizes that in its own words, and it talks in detail about these threats, but the public has absolutely no visibility until now of these threats.